Hello guys, welcome to ACI 14. As you know, we're doing the ACI courses for the group in Kiev, and to be honest, Maria and I, we are missing you a lot. We planned to do ACI 14 in April in Kiev, but then Corona made a big problem for all of us and we couldn't do it. But now we decided, just like Geshe Michael, that we're going to continue our program online, and we start with ACI 14 right now. And I hope you're all excited about it. Personally, ACI 13 in Kiev last November, I think, was a big milestone for me, because logic is such a hard course. And usually very few people make it through, but I heard that several, I think 50 people finished ACI 13 with the Kiev group, and that's amazing. You're the hardcore guys. And now, with ACI 14, the whole energy shifts completely. Max is going to laugh about me, but I will say again that this is maybe the most important course of all the 18 courses. Sometimes I say it's my favorite one on ACI 6 and ACI 2, but this is probably the most important one. And I also want to welcome all the new people that decided to join us on this amazing journey. I can tell you that the marketing is correct. It is true that if you practice what we learn in this course, you will get everything you want from people. But I can also tell you already now that maybe it's not the message that you have expected that we're going to tell you now. So I'm going to jump right into ACI 14 and share with you for this class 1 the main things we're going to talk about. First of all, we'll look into the word Lojong. What does it mean? How has it been translated? We're going to look a little bit into the Tibetan. How has it been translated incorrectly in the past? And how does Geshe Michael prefer to explain it? And that is going to take about nearly half of that first class. Then we will look, part of looking into what Lojong means is we're going to look into the lineage, meaning who wrote the Lojongs, and there are several ones that we're going to discuss and study in these next 10 courses. What's the commentary of the first one, and at the end of class 1, we're also going to start to get into the first Lojong, which is the famous Lojong in 8 verses. So if I were you, I would relax, don't stress up, take a cup of tea, listen to it. And those of you who want to make the homeworks, who then qualify to become teachers eventually also, I'm very happy that you do that. We're going to give you some idioms as usually, and also I'll discuss the homework questions specifically. But let's start right away with the idea of what is a Lojong and why would you want to learn it and practice it? Lo means mind. Okay? Now the funny thing is, and you're going to hear this in this class several times, that in Tibetan and in Sanskrit there are like 10, 15, 20 different terms of mind. In English and in German, and I think in Russian maybe as well, we only have 1 or 2 words for that. So it's a struggle sometimes, not so much to translate it because you can just use the word mind, but to really give you the correct idea and feeling of what the Tibetan and the people in India meant when they said Lojong. Jong, by the way, the second part often comes across as to make pure, or it also means to practice something. So therefore the translation very often has been, it's a mental training. And that's funny because Geshe doesn't like that. And when you have studied this course, you will probably also agree it's not a really correct translation to call Lojong mental training. Why? When I think about the word mental training, I'm usually thinking, oh, I get a higher IQ, I get better in physics, or I don't know, I get better in tricking people into doing something. Like mind in our culture and in our time is very often related to the upper part of our body, to the head. And that is not what Lojong means. It has really a completely different meaning. And we're going to give you an idea about what it means when you reach the goal of Lojong. The goal of Lojong is a complete change in our behavior. So looking back at ACI 13, if you remember the course, the reading I think was 350 pages, and typically in Buddhist philosophy, which is what the ACI courses are about, right? It's the traditional training of a Tibetan monk over 20 years, compressed into 18 courses, very intense, and extremely powerful. But usually the reading is long, and the readings in those courses is very philosophical, and you feel like you become a Buddhist philosopher probably. Lojong is completely different. The text, the Lojong that we're going to study today and next class, so for 2 classes, is only 1 page long. So in a way, I could say, your karma shifted from ACI 13 when you went through it, those 365 pages. Now you suddenly get classes with very short texts. Good for you. But the goal of Lojong, of this mind training, is a radical and complete shift and change in our behavior. And it doesn't target our head so much, but our heart. And I want to give you the famous story that Geshe Michael uses to describe what the feeling is that we want to develop together, so that we can say we actually are mastering Lojong in our lives. This is the story. Some of you may have heard it, but get into it again to just connect to the goal of this ACI 14. I think when Geshe Michael got the President's Medal from the President of the United States for being such an amazing student, he was flying to Chicago on his way to Washington apparently. And at the end of that flight, something very strange happened. The stewardesses suddenly got nervous, one started to cry. And after a while, there was an announcement that they couldn't get the gear out for landing. Or basically, they didn't know if the gear for landing came out or not, because the sign in the pilot's on the pilot's table was that it didn't go out, but they thought maybe it went out and just the signal is wrong, right? So what they started to do is they spoke to the tower, they tried to fly close to the tower so they could see if maybe the gears and the wheels for the landing are out, but they couldn't see anything either. And then they decided that they're going to circle around the airport for a long time until all the fuel was gone, the gasoline was gone, and then try to do a crash landing. And of course, the reason why they tried to spend the gasoline is because they thought if they crash, they didn't want people to burn up and die. And when that announcement came through, the energy and the attitude of the people in that plane shifted completely. And that's actually where we want to get to when we practice Lojong well. But let's get back to the plane. Remember the good old times before COVID when you could fly wherever you want to? Usually what would happen is you would worry, where am I sitting? I hope I'm not in the middle between 2 big guys. And then most of us, we are complaining about the food or about the temperature. When the announcement was made in the plane that they were attempting a crash landing, everything changed. No one complained about the food anymore, but people started to open up and realize that maybe I'm going to die in an hour. And so they asked each other questions like, where are you from? Do you have family? Can I help you with something? And long story short, the impermanence of people, our own impermanence, the fact that we all have to die, no matter how rich we are, no matter how successful or unsuccessful we are, hit them home. And they started to see the human existence in each other. They started to be friendly and loving to each other, and many people started to cry. They helped each other write letters to their loved ones. And when they eventually landed, obviously went well, otherwise we wouldn't have Geshe Michael among us. They saw that on the landing range there were ambulances and there were, what do you call it, cars for corpses. Like when you die, you get into a special car. There were 20 of those there, and firefighters and ambulances, and that's how close it was. But thank God, actually, the landing gear was just stuck, and they got it out, and they could land. It was not stuck; it got out, but the signal in the pilot was wrong, in the plane was wrong, and then everything was good. But the moment they had landed and they survived that moment, the energy changed again, and people got back to being a little bit grumpy about, losing time and where's the luggage, and maybe pushing themselves again on the way out. And the point of Lojong training, of training to open our hearts, is to realize that we are all, right now, no matter where you're sitting, at home or in an office, we are also in a plane that is slowly going down and crash. And that plane is the fact that we all have to die. Now, some people might say, well, I know I have to die, but what the heck, I have to pay rents and I have to do this and that. The Tibetans say that one very important level of spiritual intelligence is the understanding of your own impermanence. If you're not aware that you inevitably have to die, and if you don't start to treat other people because of that in a much more loving and friendly way, because they are the same like you, then you will never get happy. You will never be able to get really happy, no matter how successful you are otherwise. So we can truly say that recognizing our impermanence, recognizing the fact that, I don't know how many people participate, a couple of hundred hopefully, all of us are going to die eventually. And all of us are going to be forgotten eventually. There will be a time when the last person on this call will still be somewhere in a photo, and our grandchildren will maybe look at the photo and ask someone else, who is that? He said, oh, that was grandpa, but he died long time ago. And then that photo will go to the garbage, and that's the last time anyone will ever think or talk about you. And so recognizing our impermanence and being aware of it during the day when we meet other people and seeing in them the suffering that a human life implies gives us the feeling of Lojong. Why can't we have that feeling of a plane sinking and going to crash sooner or later all the time? It's pretty simple. The reason why we cannot have is because our mind rejects it. And you maybe feel that already now. You maybe think, that's weird, I know I'm going to die, but how is going to get into that fact and understanding that we are all suffering going to help me to get what I want in my life? Our minds resist this very important and truthful fact, and we try not to think about it, which is a sign that we are deeply in ignorance and we are not even able to face the only truth in our life, which is that we have to die. What would happen if we have that attitude in our mind all the time? And I have another example from my own experience. It's a little bit for me, when your heart opens and when you get good at Lojong, it's a little bit like being very much in love and realizing that the other person is in a big problem that they maybe don't even see at the same time. So for me, I don't know in Russian, but in German we say that love makes blind, right? When people are completely in love, they are not thinking clearly. Other people think. I'm actually thinking when you're really in love, that's the time when you see the world correctly and not the other way around. But when we are really in love, then we are ready to do anything for the other person. We buy flowers, we prepare food for them. We are not seeing their failures and their mistakes at all because we're so in love. Maybe they have small mistakes, but you say, no, it just makes her more special, or it makes him more special. And so we have these rare moments in our life over a period of 50, 60, 70, 80 years where we are in love, willing to overlook the problems that other people have because we have this open heart and we're just good human beings at that time. We don't mind if the other person requests things from us or asks us to do more. We're just happy to do it. And I think the other time in our lives when that happens is when someone close to us dies. For me, I had that effect when my mother died. I was so devastated, not because I didn't expect it. She had cancer already for a while, but it struck me home on a very deep and real level of my being that she's gone forever, and that I also at some point will have to leave this body and this mind and be gone forever. And when you confront and allow that realization to grow and get clear on it, you ask yourself the one question which we need to ask ourselves: what's the point of all this? What's the point of living if we all have to lose all our material possessions, all our friends, our families, every relationship that we have ever had? why should I fight for money or be jealous or angry about other people when we are all together in a plane that is slowly crashing? Why shouldn't we be nice to each other? So the point of Lojong, of this whole course of ACI 14, is to change our heart. And you already know that it's a true suggestion because it is our condition. But the Chong part of it, which is we're going to talk about a little bit more later, is that it does not come naturally to us. We have to practice it. We have to work at it. We have to grow the practice of understanding of love. And that's what Lojong is supposed to do. So to be honest, most of the ACI courses, as I said before, they give us the understanding of emptiness, which means that we understand that actually everything, every person around us in our lives, every situation comes from mental seed in our own mind, is a projection. And we realize we truly are, and we have to accept the fact that we are a master of our own destiny. And these ACI courses, the wisdom is sometimes very strong for the head and for the mind, in the sense that there's a lot of studying involved. But ACI 14, according to Geshe-la and in my experience as well, is the most difficult one, because that course has to happen in your family, it has to happen in your office, and it has to happen in your daily life. It's a struggle. Lojong is a training to open your heart to other people and to serve them. If you remember and know the pen and the 4 steps, you know that every time you do that, you actually will create seeds for yourself to get whatever you want to. But the point of Buddhism, the point of ACI 14, of Lojong, is to train yourselves in changing your attitudes towards other people. That's it. Now let's talk a moment about the lineage, and before that we're going to have a short break for a cup of tea. There are 3 people I want you to remember. I'm going to mention 3 different sources. The first one is not so relevant for this class, but for all the other classes, because there is a monk whose name was Muchen Kunchok Gyeltsen. We're going to write it down for you as well in the PowerPoint, from the 14th century. And he put together 100 texts of Lojongs, and that text together is called Lojong Gyatsa, which means Compendium of Lojong Texts. So, as I mentioned before, a Lojong is a very short information that usually the Lama gives you, maybe when they're in a car with you, or they whisper into your ear something sweet and short that you can remember, and it can become a lifetime praxis. So there are many different Lojongs, and I think we're going to talk about 6 different Lojongs during this ACI 14. So the first name to remember is Muchen Kunchok Gyeltsen from the 14th century, who wrote the Compendium of Lojong Texts. However, in class 1 and 2, we're going to study a famous Lojong. It's called the Lojong in 8 verses, or Tsikgyema. And this is written by Dorje Senge, or the Diamond Lion, and we're going to talk about him in a moment. Because the third person I want you to remember is Chankya Rinpoche. And that's a special Lama in our lineage that we're going to talk about for a couple of minutes, because he talked about the Lojong and what Lojong means in a different way. Chankya Rinpoche lived from 1642 to 1714, and he said a very beautiful thing about Lojong, which explains again in an even deeper way what it really means. Chankya Rinpoche, by the way, he was famous in our lineage, and he's even on Wikipedia, you can find him. He was a teacher of the Chinese emperors, and was during a time when there was a beautiful, peaceful connection between China and Tibet. So the emperors of China, they very often had Tibetan lamas. They were even coming down from the throne, bowing to the lama the way it was appropriate at that time. And Chankya Rinpoche was, during a very powerful and important period, the lama of the emperor of China. His reincarnation, when he was reborn, there was a tension between China and Tibet, and so the monks decided to call the reincarnation of Chankya Rinpoche not Chankya Rinpoche, so they kept it hidden, but they called him Babongka Rinpoche. And as some of you, or most of you who studied the ACI courses know already, Babongka Rinpoche is in our lineage. He was the teacher of Geshe Michael's teacher. So Geshe Michael Roche, as you know, is our Lama. He translated all these Tibetan and Sanskrit texts into the 18 ACI courses. He studied in New York, in New Jersey, with Ken Rinpoche Geshe Lobsang Taching, who was the abbot of Serra May. His teacher was Tricang Rinpoche, and Tricang Rinpoche's teacher was Babongka Rinpoche, who again is a reincarnation of Chankya Rinpoche. Babongka Rinpoche also wrote the Lamrim that Geshe Michael has been teaching for the past years. Maybe you participated in the last two, Lamrim 35 or 36. And the text that Geshe Michael is going through slowly now, already for 10 years, is the teaching that Babongka Rinpoche taught over 24 days in 1921 in Tibet. But his earlier in his earlier life, Babongka Rinpoche was called Chankya Rinpoche, and he calls the 8 verses, which we're going to go through in a moment, who were written by Dorje Sengye, or Diamond Lion, who we're going to talk about in a second. He called them not a Lojong, but a Semjong. And this is again an indication that he is trying to tell us something when he calls the Lojong a Semjong. So let's look into those 2 words. Changchukki Sem in Tibetan means bodhicitta, which is a feeling of ultimate love for all living beings. And it is the goal of Buddhism to reach that state. So what Chankya Rinpoche is saying when he calls the Lojong a Semjong is that the goal of the practice of the Lojong that we're going to look upon in a moment is to reach Sem, to develop bodhicitta, to develop the wish for enlightenment so we can help all beings. Let's talk about bodhicitta for a moment, especially for the people who are new. This is a Sanskrit word which means enlightened mind, kind of. But what it really, the meaning is that we have to develop in ourselves the wish to become a fully enlightened being, because such a person, such a being has incredible qualities that allows them to appear with countless different bodies on different planets and help countless beings at the same time. If you're more interested in this concept, in ACI 2 and ACI 6, I believe there are deep explanations of what the feeling, the experience when you reach the point of bodhicitta for the first time is. And of course, Geshe Michael described it, and it is his own experience that he's talking about. But basically, after deep meditation, when you come out of the direct perception of emptiness, which is the direct experience that everything in your world comes from you, your mind is so open that after you get out of the meditation, in a period of 10 to 20 minutes, you suddenly see beings appear in front of you, one after the other. First your mom, then your dad, then other family members, then friends, then every living human being on this planet, every animal, any living being on this world, and then countless other worlds. I know this sounds maybe a little bit like a fairy tale, but when you read the ancient scriptures and when you hear the experience described by Geshe Michael, you realize that that is a thing that exists, and it is a state of mind that we can reach and we are supposed to reach. The practice of Lojong is a practice that is designed to help us to reach this level of bodhicitta. If you want to know more about it, in the last Lamrim 36 in class 12, episode 12, Geshe Michael is talking about that experience, and I think in the earlier episodes also. And they are for free on the knowledge base, even with Russian translation, so you're welcome to check it out and listen there. Why are we talking about this? We're talking about this because Chankya Rinpoche, which is an earlier life of Babongka Rinpoche, our lineage Lama, he calls the Lojong in 8 verses not a Lojong but a Semjong, because he's trying to point out that we are working to reach this attitude of a feeling that we're all in the same sinking ship where we are dying, And because of that, we have to try to develop a love for every living being, because we're all in the same situation. Now, short explanation about who is the author of our first Lojong. Dorje Sengye, I already mentioned him, the Diamond Lion. He lived from 1054 to 1123. And his name, as I said before, is Dorje Sengye or Diamond Lion, or also Langri Tangpa, because that's a region in Tibet where he came from. And he wrote this book in 8 verses. Dorje Sengye was a Kadampa. Kadampa is a very interesting term because it was the first generation of Buddhists in Tibet. So when Buddhism started in Tibet, which was around the year 1000, right, about 1000 years ago, there were people going from Tibet over the Himalayas to India, meeting the masters of Buddhism in India, and then bringing the wisdom back to Tibet and teaching each other what they had learned. This first generation of Buddhists in Tibet were called Kadampas. And I always feel that in a way, this generation of Buddhists in the West, like you guys and we and what Geshe Michael is doing in the United States, we are like the Kadampas, because we are not brought up in a society that's teaching us from the beginning there are past and future lives, and there's emptiness, things come from your mind. We are new to this. And because of that, we have to make special efforts in many ways to reach this wisdom and incorporate it in our lives. And my feeling is, because of that, the karma, the seeds of doing that is so powerful and so strong, trying to spread a completely new idea, a completely new wisdom, completely new way of looking at the world in a culture and society that doesn't know or accept it from the beginning. It's a very powerful time to be alive, and a very powerful way of creating enormous good seeds if we manage to succeed. So Dorje Sengye, or Diamond Lion, he said that these 8 verses is a dampa. What's a dampa? It comes from Kadampa, right? But a dampa is a short religious instruction whispered from the teacher to the student in a very holy moment. And the very cool thing is that at a certain spiritual level, everything you hear becomes a dampa. And that then means Kadampa. Meaning, in the beginning, our seeds only allow us to hear very holy words or holy information passed on when we go to teaching from our Lama. For me, especially when I go to the Lamrim of Geshe Michael, or even to the ACI event, or when I study the ACI courses, then I feel this is information which is incredible. But when we get more and more aligned with the fact that everything is coming from our own mental seeds, and if we continue to plant very powerful mental seeds, it necessarily must mean that we could get holy information in the supermarket when we go in Novus and listen to other people, because everything is created by our own actions. And so people around us can start to become angels. And when everything people say around us becomes a dampa, then we become Kadampas, which is what Dorje Sengye, or Diamond Lion, was called. So it's a very cool term. Now, let's finish with the first part. The first part is the explanation of what Lojong means. Again, as I said before, we call it's a training for your heart. And the Chong is the training part. The Lo or the Sem means the mind, thought or wish, but the Chong means you have to work hard on it. Meaning, even Geshe Michael says, the feeling in the plane when it went down, and the love we had for other people, cutting down the borders between us by opening up and saying, who are you? Like, what did you do in your life? Who is going to miss you if you die right now? These are very rare moments, and usually they don't come naturally to us. We have to work on them. We have to do practices in order to be able to get there all the time. And that's what Lojong is all about. So the first Lojong that I want to introduce to you is called the Lojong in 8 verses. I mentioned it before. And we're going to go through each verse. In this first class, we're only going to do the first 4 verses, and then in the second class, we're going to do the second 4. So let's start. Ready? Let's take one more drinking break. For good luck, I'm going to always say the Tibetan. You know the routine. If you want to, you can repeat it. It's good luck. It plants good seeds for you, but you don't have to remember it. So the first of the 8 verses from Diamond Lion is called Dakni Semchen Tamche La Yishin Norbu Lechlak Pai. And the translation basically means people around you are more precious than a wishing jewel, a jewel that gives you anything you wish for. So here we are. This is not hundreds of pages of Buddhist philosophy, it's one short verse. And there are 3 different ways how this verse can be translated. We're going to go into the details and then explain why is it true. Is it true that the people around us are more precious than a wishing jewel? If you ask me, I don't usually feel like that, but let's see what this verse says. The first way of translating and reading this first verse is that we cannot even imagine how incredibly beautiful and powerful and amazing we will feel when we reach our own enlightenment. Now, if you think, when I met Maria, I don't know if it's a story, but I met Maria in Kiev, my wife, in Kiev the first time, and very soon I knew that she was a very special person for me. And I said on the first evening, the first couple of hours, you and me, we're going to get enlightened together. And she looked at me, her English was not that good at that time. She looked at me, she said, "Enlighten what? If you feel like that right now, don't worry about it." We say that because the story with the pen is true, and if you haven't heard about it, ask someone in your homework groups or in your tutors. We have a lot of curators or other friends who have been studying for a while. The story of the pen teaches us that everything comes from our own mental seeds. Meaning even the body that we have comes from our own mental seeds. And that implies necessarily that if we can change the seeds that we have planted to create a body like this, which is made out of blood and bones and flesh, which must die, if we can change those seeds, according to scriptures, according to the ACI courses and to all religions that I'm aware of, we can change our own being and transform it radically into light. And so the first way to read this first line of the Lojong is, you cannot even imagine, you cannot even conceive of how nice it will be when you get to your own tantric enlightenment. Even if someone would explain it to you, you couldn't be able to think of it, you couldn't imagine it. You cannot imagine the steps, and it's very hard to believe that we could change so radically, which is one of our most powerful obstacles, I believe. If you've practiced ACI courses and meditation and yoga for a while, I think we all know we go through the different obstacles, but one of the most powerful and most difficult to overcome is to actually believe that I can transform this weird, weak and suffering body and mind of mine into a completely, extremely powerful being that can help everyone. As a side note, the only way to do it is through a Lama, through a teacher, because they will give you the hope in yourself that you don't have about yourself. So in a way, to read this first paragraph in this way means that the secret teachings are a self-protecting secret, because you cannot even imagine the result that you will reach. And you cannot also not imagine the process or steps that you're going to take until you get there. And in that sense, now we get back to the meaning of the verse, anything that would be able to bring you closer to enlightenment would be better than a wish-giving jewel. You know the story with Aladdin, you rub a lamp and then the powerful spirit appears and he fulfills your every wish. The problem with a wish-fulfilling gem is that you are limited by it because of your own imagination and what you're able to wish for, right? You can only frame a wish that you can imagine. But what about the things? What about the things you could reach and become that you cannot even think of? You're limited by them. And therefore, Lojong, the famous 8 verses, is saying the people around you are more precious than a wishing jewel that gives you anything you wish for. Because, according to the first way to translate this verse or explain it, they can bring you to your own enlightenment, which nothing else can. And it's very important, this is not a metaphor, okay? This is literal. The only way you can get to this extraordinary mind which an enlightened being have and an angel's body is through the people around you. So it's saying, they are going to get me to heaven. I love you. Thank you, people around me, especially those who upset me and piss me off. Please test me, make me learn to be kind, make me stronger. That's how this text is explained. And Geshe-la says again, and it's very easy for me to make this recording and to tell you what I've learned from Geshe-la, but honestly, for me as well, it's very hard to practice it. When someone really upsets me, I have a situation right now where someone is doing everything they can to make me, think this is extremely difficult. We need the people around us to be difficult every day at work so that you can become a real Buddhist. It does not mean, of course, that you're going to have a Buddha statue around your neck or anything like that. To be a real Buddhist means you remember that the world comes from you, and the only way to stop suffering for yourself is to stop reacting in a negative way, because then those seeds will wear out and good seeds will come up. Another way of reading or translating this first verse is to say that the state of mind, bodhicitta or ultimate compassion, that wants to reach this highest goal is more precious than a wish-giving gem. So I said, right, the first verse, the diamond line verse was, you can't the people around you are more precious than a wishing jewel that gives you anything you wish for. And the second way of understanding is that it's not the enlightenment itself, but the state of mind that wishes to become enlightened is more powerful than anything that you can imagine. And the third way of describing or reading that same first verse is that Buddhahood itself, the final goal, is better than a wishing gem. Now, we come to the second verse. We're going to do 4 verses today, right? We started to talk about Lojong in general, what it means. Then we started with the famous Lojong in 8 verses by Dorje Sengye or Diamond Line. And we finished with the first verse. Now comes the second one. That's a hard one, guys. Fasten your seatbelt. Maybe let's take a sip before we do go there. It needs explanation, okay? But I read it to you first. Wherever I am, whoever I'm with, may I see myself as lowest of all, and may I see others as the best. Now, very important first comment to that second verse. This is not meant to be, and it is not an exercise in low self-esteem. And Geshe Michael or I never want you to take it like that, okay? It does not mean you should see yourself as bad or not capable of doing something. What it means, and that's very important and very beautiful, and I think our image is showing that, because if you look closely in that bus, you see someone with angel's wings, right? What it means is that anyone around you could be an enlightened being, but you don't know which one or who it is. According to these ancient scriptures, according to the Tibetan scriptures, there should be a few enlightened people, emanations of a Buddha, in every crowd of people that you meet. It's not difficult for them to appear to you that way in order to help you. Among the people you see every day, there are a few who are already enlightened. And they're trying very hard to help you to get enlightened as well. But our problem is that we don't know who it is. So the point of this verse is that a portion of the people around you are enlightened, and they're trying to help you to get there. So it's not the point to feel bad about yourselves. When we say that everyone is higher, it is to think, try to listen to other people, try to see the divine in them. Always question when something happens, think maybe he's enlightened already, he's trying to show me and teach me something. And try to understand what they're trying to tell you. That was the second verse. Now, we are pretty soon done with the first session. The first one, Diamond Line, verse number 3, is about what happens when we get into a situation where we have a mental affliction. It's meaning a bad thought. And this is the third verse of the Lojong in 8 verses. Once in a while, you're going to get upset or have a bad thought in your mind. I wish it would be only once in a while. What's the recommendation to do then? Should I wait? No. It says, stop it immediately. Okay, I'll read it one more time. Once in a while, you're going to get upset or have a bad thought in your mind. Stop it immediately. The minute we start to feel bad towards someone, the minute we start to have a bad thought about someone, face that thought and admit it is your own problem because it comes from your own seeds. The people around you, they are suffering the same as you are. They are dying as you are. And according to the laws of seeds, which means you have to study karma in order to understand it, even one moment of slight irritation at someone else has a very profound effect on your future. Meaning it can very well be that a moment of bad thoughts, hopefully not a longer period, about someone or something, can have a tremendous effect in your future, and it can be very damaging for you. Those of you who have studied the laws of karma, it's of course the law that karmic seeds grow exponentially. So try to do everything you can to stop bad feelings or bad thoughts at any time whenever you catch them. And the only really way to do that, if you don't know what this is, I'll show it to you, is the 6 times book. If you're new, ask your homework curators or ask friends who've been around for a while. It's the most powerful way to control your mind and to clean it out. Even small irritations, work hard to stop them immediately. So now we already have 3 pretty powerful messages, right? First of all, the people around us are more precious than a wishing jewel. Secondly, whenever I meet someone else, I will try to see them as an enlightened being already. Thirdly, once in a while we get a bad thought, but we should do everything we can to stop them immediately. Now, what's the 4th verse of the Lojong of 8 verses and the last one for today? This is a funny one, okay? Get ready. The first verse is saying, bad people are hard to find, so try to get the most out of it. Now, this sounds a little bit weird, right? Because we all are, me especially, oh my God, I'm trying to get away from bad people. I don't want to be around people who are difficult to be with, who are dangerous or aggressive, or who are irritating me constantly. That's the main one, right? But according to Master Shantideva, once you learn the secret of Buddhism, which is that stop reacting to bad things in a bad way, you stop the seeds, you stop the causes of meeting them again and again. And therefore the best way to get rid of people is to realize that you have made them, you have created the situation and the people around them, and therefore you have to be kind to them. You don't have to fire people at work, therefore. You have to be sweet and kind to them, and then they will change because your seeds change. So that's the last verse for today already. I want to say one more thing because this is it's a hard teaching, okay guys, I know that. It's very difficult, and I want to let you know that Lojong in general has been a secret practice for 1,000 years. So for over 1,000 years, Lamas did not share these ideas, did not share these verses, because they thought that the students the people who listen to them are not strong enough, they won't be able to actually practice this and maybe even reject it, and that would be a very bad seed. However, okay, in a way, what I have done and what we're doing with ACI 14, and it's not the first 13, it's 14, it's a very late course because it requires a lot of understanding and preparation. In a way, we are cursing you with this course because now you know that this is the right way to live. It's hard to live that way, and it's hard to follow those recommendations, but it's the only way to live. So I'm summarizing those 4 verses. And first I'm summarizing Lojong and the meaning of Lojong. Lojong is a training to open your heart. It's a training to react and change our behavior in a radical and completely new way, which we usually don't do. And it requires work. It's not enough to hear it. We have to get into the habit of changing our way of behaving. The first 4 verses were people around you. The first 4 verses of the 8 verses Lojong were the people around you are more precious than a wishing jewel, a jewel that gives you anything you wish for. Wherever I am, whoever I am with, may I see myself as lowest of all and may I see others as best. Once in a while, I'm going to get upset or have a bad thought. Stop it immediately. Bad people are hard to find, so try to get the most out of it. And with that, I want to finish the first session. Thank you so much for participating, for being interested in these incredible teachings, and for being open-minded and open-hearted enough to consider putting them into practice. I also want to thank the team around Max, all the incredible curators, the translators who put so much work into it to get these teachings to you. And I hope that you will be able to finish the homeworks and quizzes, complete the course, and that we will meet soon in Kiev again, and we can actually then hug each other and tell each other how we're doing when we're practicing Lojong.